Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast. Today, we are going to talk about tier-based rankings for players in half-point PPR leagues. Again, depending on how your league scores points, has an enormous impact on the value of the players in that league. And while some players are very, very stable, like Christian McCaffrey, consensus number one, regardless of how your league scores points, there are many players that slide really far down or far up tiers, depending. So you definitely want to check it out. A lot of good information here, and let's do.
Listen up. It's time for the Fantasy Maverick podcast, starring the guy who's going to help you win that fantasy championship, Jimmy Maverick.
Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast. And I'm getting super excited here. We're almost to draft time. I got my first draft next weekend, so I'm really looking forward to that. I'm practicing a lot. I'm doing a lot of mock drafts. I hope you are too. And hey, before we get to today's topic, I would like you to please, if you could, hit the like button, leave a comment, share this with your friends, and of course, subscribe. All those things really help my channel out and increasing my visibility. I do appreciate it. So thank you very much for doing that. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to do another tier show, and we're going to do tiers for the half-point PPR. Now, I've already done one for the standard point league, and I've already done one for the PPR with TE Premium. So, we're just looking to see how players fall. And it's kind of amazing that some players are rather stable, depending on whatever league you're in. They have about the same tier value. But some players move around a lot. They really have a lot of volatility depending on how your league scores points. That's why it's so important to have that information when you're going into a draft to know who you should be targeting. Because there are good choices and there are bad choices in every single round. You just got to be able to find yourself the best choices for your league. Do the tiers. Okay, so the way I do the tiers is everybody in a tier is going to be within 1 point per week of each other. Okay, so that means the best player in tier 3 and the worst player in tier 3, the difference between the two is about 1 point per week. And then when you're moving between tiers, you can basically assume that it's about 1 point per week less that player will get than the player in the tier above him. So that means that a tier 5 player would earn approximately 5 fewer points per week than the tier 1 player. So that's how I do my tiers. And the other thing is that I combine the running backs, the wide receivers, and the tight ends all onto the same tier list because I hate separate tier lists. Darn it. Hold on. Okay. Because I hate separate tier lists. I mean, how am I supposed to compare a tier 3 tight end to a tier 3 wide receiver? They're not going to be the same. So I'm trying to put all these key players in on their own tiers. Of course, I'm not looking at the quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are on completely different track as far as fantasy football is concerned. So that's the way I do it. So let's get started. Okay, so half-point PPR tiers. And starting with the tier 1, the guy is no surprise. He's at the top of every single list, regardless of point schedule, but it is Christian McCaffrey, who in half-point PPR is projected to score 303 fantasy points, the only player that is projected to score over 300 points in this kind of league. So that's very easy, quick and easy. Now, dropping to tier 2, there's actually 2 players in tier 2, but I was considering putting the second player into tier 3, but according to my rules, both of them fall into tier 2. The first name, no surprise, Dalvin Cook, but the second name is Saquon Barkley. And this is the thing, man. I'm calling Saquon Barkley the highest risk-reward player of this fantasy season. And just the fact that he is going at the end of the first round or beginning of the second round in most drafts make him a very tempting target. Now, there's a million reasons why you don't want to take Christian McCaffrey. Here's some of them. Terrible offensive line. Coming off a season-ending injury, playing with inconsistent quarterback in Daniel Jones. There's a million reasons not to consider this guy, but you also have to consider that it is a contract year. Saquon Barkley's next contract is based on how he's going to do this year. If he does terrible, he'll get like an $8 or $9 million a year extension. But if he does great, he'll be in the upper tier level of running back compensation, which would be someone like Christian McCaffrey or Ezekiel Elliott. Guys that are getting $13 to $15 million a year. So that's what he's playing for this year. That's a lot. And also, his quarterback, Daniel Jones, who is also a gigantic question mark. Guess what? It is a contract year for him as well. That's very good for fantasy. Anytime there's two offensive players on a contract year on the same team, they tend to do very well together. Case in point would be 2 years ago with Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper. Both those guys had career best seasons on a contract year, and they both got big extensions, although it took a little while longer for Dak to get his. But you see what I mean. There's tremendous upside with Saquon. Just a lot of risk too. So you take it as you can get it. But if I'm late in the first, if I have a late first round pick, if I'm picking 10th and he's still on the board, I'm probably going to take him. You can't deny the value. So anyway, that's enough on Saquon. Let's move on to Tier 3. Tier 3 has 5 players, and again, they're all first round players. But Tier 3 consists of Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, and Stephon Diggs. They're all fantastic choices. Great, get them. You can basically guarantee yourself one of these guys in the first round. They're all excellent choices. I don't really have anything negative to say about any of them except for Devontae Adams as a regression candidate. Derrick Henry's a regression candidate too. But I think they're good. Oh, and you know what? Alvin Kamara, he's a regression candidate too. But I think even with the regression risk, they're still worth the pick. They're still solid plays. I was kind of surprised here to see on the next tier, it breaks. There's a big break between the worst player in Tier 3 and the best player in Tier 4. Worst player in Tier 3 is projected to get 251 fantasy points. The best player in Tier 4 is projected to only get 240 fantasy points. That's a pretty substantial break between tiers. And this is also the first tier that has second-round players, and it is actually mostly second-round players. But the riskiest player for Tier 4 would be Zeke Elliott, who, again, ranks as the best Tier 4 player at 240 fantasy points. But you also have some great second-round choices: Najee Harris, Aaron Jones, Calvin Ridley, A.J. Brown, Antonio Gibson, DK Metcalf, DeAndre Hopkins, and Jonathan Taylor. That's great. You go around, you get yourself one of these top 3 tier players, and then you follow it up with a Tier 4 player. Your team is going to be in really, really good shape here. Like I said, I think they're all good, but the one that you should be the most cautious about is Zeke Elliott, just because he doesn't rate as well. And if you've got a choice between Zeke Elliott and Derrick Henry or Zeke Elliott and Devontae Adams, I think I would have to go and get one of those Tier 3 guys instead. So it's just something to consider. Moving on to Tier 5. Now, Tier 5 also contains first-round players, but these players extend out to the 4th round. So you've got a nice wide range in this tier that you can stay in for a few rounds if you play your cards right. Now, the worst value player in this tier would be Nick Chubb, who's a first-round pick, but is only projected to score 210 fantasy points. Remember, Christian McCaffrey is projected to score nearly 100 more points during the fantasy season than someone like Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is a very poor choice for half-point PPR for the obvious reason that the guy doesn't catch passes. So it's a big red flag. But when I look at the rest of this list, it is mostly 3rd and 4th round players. There are some 2nd round players. You got Austin Eckler, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Those guys are 2nd round. But then you got a guy like Miles Sanders, who's in the 4th round. You've got DeAndre Swift, CeeDee Lamb, Robert Woods, all 3rd round players in this tier. Here's some other names. We got Travis Kelce, Justin Jefferson, Joe Mixon, Chris Carson, Keenan Allen, J.K. Dobbins. So you've got some really good choices here. And again, if you play your cards right, in the 3rd and 4th round, you grab yourself 2 Tier 5 players, you're going to be in really good shape compared to your opponents. So it's just something to consider. So now we're going to drop another tier. We're dropping to Tier 6, and this is for the 2nd round through the 6th round. And what you're typically going to find going out for the rest of the time here is that the worst value plays in each tier are the tight ends. And it's just the nature of the tight end. They're just terrible value no matter what, just because of where they're going on the draft board relative to their projected value. So when I say, the worst value player in this round is so-and-so, it's mostly going to be the tight end. In this case, that is the case with Darren Waller, who is the only second-round player to fall in this tier. And but this tier extends out to the 6th round. So again, playing your cards right, maximizing the tiers, you could get yourself 2 tier 6 players in the 5th and 6th round if things go your way. Here's the names in tier 6. Josh Jacobs, Mike Evans, David Montgomery, Terry McLaurin, Allen Robinson, Darren Waller, Kenny Golladay, DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, Darrell Henderson, Chris Godwin, Chase Edmonds, and Amari Cooper. These guys range in value anywhere from 187 fantasy points to 204 fantasy points during the fantasy season. And just looking at this list, the best value players right now would be Kenny Golladay, who is a tremendous discount. And what's the deal with the Giants with their extreme value, high-risk players? I'm not real big on Kenny Golladay. He's got the hamstring injury right now. He is a very high risk, and I might be downgrading his value very soon here. But for right now, he is a fantastic 6th round value player. And again, playing with a quarterback on a contract year. So there's upside there. So there is reasons to draft Kenny Golladay, although I do think he's going a little bit too early in most drafts, but you can't deny the value. It is serious value. There's also Chase Edmonds, 5th round player falling in this tier. That's also a very nice play. I do like Chase Edmonds a lot. I think he's great. If you're going for a mid-round value play for running back, I think he's a really, really good choice in the 5th round, especially in PPR type leagues where there's some sort of PPR component. You've also got DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, Darrell Henderson, and Josh Jacobs, all 4th round players that offer a tremendous amount of value. I mean, Josh Jacobs is the highest tier 6 value player in the 4th round, in tier 6 overall, actually. So, absolutely great target for the 4th round. I absolutely like that. So anyway, there are some names there. So let's move on. Let's go on to tier 7. Tier 7 is a little bit of a bigger tier, so we got more players. This is ranging anywhere from the 3rd round to the 9th round. I'll let you guess who the 3rd round player is, but it consists of the following players. You've got George Kittle, Kareem Hunt, Tyler Lockett, Julio Jones, Travis Etienne, Robbie Anderson, Myles Gaskin, Adam Thielen, Chase Claypool, Cortland Sutton, T. Higgins, Brandon Cooks, Jamar Chase, Brandon Ayuk, Laviska Shenault, Curtis Samuel, Deontay Johnson, and Juju Smith-Schuster. Great. Big, huge range of players. Again, this extends out to the 9th round, so you could potentially get yourself 7th, 8th, 9th round, get yourself 3 tier 7 players. Who are the worst value plays in this tier? Well, of course, it's George Kittle, who's a 3rd round pick. And then you've got players like Kareem Hunt, Julio Jones, Travis Etienne, all 4th round picks. Again, I'd rather have the tier 6 players instead. But some of the best value plays here, the best ones by far, Laviska Shenault and Curtis Samuel in the 9th round. That's both great. Brandon Cooks in the 8th round. You got Cortland Sutton and Robbie Anderson in the 7th. You got Chase Claypool in the 6th. There are some really, really great options for value. And the fact that you could get like 3 players from this tier would be very, very good for your fantasy team. And notice how it's also mostly wide receivers here. And when we talk wide receivers, I talk about wide receivers from the 4th round to the 8th round as being the best value plays in the league. This certainly validates that. So let's move on to tier 8. Now tier 8 runs from the 4th round to the 11th round. So again, you could spend maybe 2 rounds here, get 2 of these players. This is a substantial. Actually, this is not as big a list. Tier 9 is much bigger, but we're getting players ranging from 169 fantasy points to 159 fantasy points in this case. Here's the list. We got DJ Chark, Mike Davis, Mark Andrews, Jerry Jeudy, OBJ, Tyler Boyd, Deebo Samuel, Devonta Smith, Michael Gallup, Marquise Brown, Javonte Williams, TJ Hawkinson, Will Fuller, Jarvis Landry, and Kyle Pitts. Now, of this tier, the worst value players, big surprise, it's the tight ends and the running backs. We got Mark Andrews as a 5th. We got Mike Davis as a 4th. That's a big red flag there. Javonte Williams, TJ Hawkinson, both in the 5th round. But on the flip side, you got players like DJ Chark in the 7th. You've got Michael Gallup in the 9th. Marquise Brown in the 11th. Jarvis Landry in the 10th. These are all really, really good value plays for the fantasy season. So there's a lot of good stuff here. Again, you could spend 2 rounds in this tier, pick up those players, you will be in a very good position. So that's tier 8. Now, we're only going to go to tier 10 because once we get past tier 10, you're basically past the wide receiver 4s and the running back 4s and 5s. You're way down the list. You're mostly going on speculative plays at that point. So, the tier 9 is kind of like the last of the flex value plays, the last of the top 100 value players, and tier 9 runs from the 6th round to the 14th round as far as players. But here's the list. So in tier 9, you've got Michael Thomas, Cole Beasley, Corey Davis, Jalen Waddle, Mike Williams, Damian Harris, Kenyon Drake, James Robinson, Henry Ruggs, Antonio Brown, Leonard Fournette, Raheem Mostert, David Johnson, Logan Thomas, T.Y. Hilton, Marvin Jones, Ronald Jones, James Conner, Melvin Gordon, Jalen Reagor, Russell Gage, Elijah Moore, Zach Moss, A.J. Dillon, and Darrell Mooney. So this is a huge list, probably the biggest tier so far. And of the list, the poorest value players would be players like Damian Harris in the 6th, James Robinson in the 7th, Raheem Mostert in the 6th, Ronald Jones in the 7th, James Conner in the 7th, Zach Moss in the 7th. But on the flip side, the best value plays would be someone like Cole Beasley right now is in the, I want to say 12th round. Sorry, I can't read my handwriting. 12th round. We got Corey Davis in the 10th, Jalen Waddle in the 10th. You've got Henry Ruggs in the 12th. I can't read my handwriting here. T.Y. Hilton in the 13th, Marvin Jones in the 11th, Jalen Reagor in the 14th round, Elijah Moore in the 12th round. So again, here's a situation where you could spend another 3 rounds, 12th, 13th, 14th round in tier 9, picking up these players. These guys are real key because these are like borderline flex plays, borderline top 100 value. They are the last of the top 100 value. And you got someone like Michael Thomas, who obviously is not going to play for the first half of the year, but could be very critical to your team's success in the once you get to the fantasy playoffs, because he'll be a wide receiver 1 level of volume. So the final tier is tier 10. And these are players that range from 133 points to 116 points during the fantasy season. And it consists of the following players. So we've got Mecole Hardman, Nelson Aguilar, Jacoby Myers, Brashad Perryman, Devontae Parker, Jamal Williams, Robert Tonyan, Dallas Goedert, Michael Carter, Randall Cobb, Tyrell Williams, Michael Pittman, Trey Sermon, Rondell Moore, Paris Campbell, J.D. McKissick, Mike Gesicki, James White, Noah Fant, and Jonnu Smith. Now, outside of the tight ends, basically these guys are not startable, but they are situationally available to help your team, on bye weeks or because of injuries. They offer a decent floor that offers some upside if they get the touchdown. And this tier, boy, you know what? I didn't run down the stats, but you can get some of these guys as late as the 18th round. These are guys to finish out your draft with, those 15, 16, 17, 18 round picks. These are the guys you want to target. This is who you want to fill your roster with. But as far as like the worst value players in this round, Michael Carter, Trey Sermon, Noah Fant, those guys are all 6th and 7th round players. Very, very risky. I might be willing to take a chance on Trey Sermon because he's playing behind a low reliability player in Raheem Mostert. Mostert's only a tier 9, so I think that the odds are better in Trey Sermon's favor. But again, it's going to be a muddled backfield anyway. There's a lot of running backs back there. Plus, you talk about bringing in, Trey Lance, who's going to be a rushing quarterback, who's going to score a lot of rushing touchdowns, is going to vulture touchdowns away from the running backs on this team. Again, it's just a very risky play. And that's why I've kind of faded Trey Sermon after being very bullish on him earlier in the year, is because of that quarterback change situation and what that's going to do for the overall opportunities related to the running backs in San Francisco. But as far as good value players, I mean, you got Mecole Hardman as a 13th round pick. Nelson Aguilar is a 15th round. Jacoby Myers is a 14th round. Brashad Perryman is a 17th round, although I'm fading him. He's not been playing well in the preseason, and they're moving him down like as the 4th wide receiver on that team. But on the flip side, you got Tyrell Williams, who's an 18th round pick. Again, situationally in a very good position here, especially if Brashad Perryman gets cut. Then he's going to be the one. That's crazy. But there could be a potential for startable fantasy value, okay? We've got Randall Cobb in the 17th round. We've got Paris Campbell in the 16th round. So there's some really good choices here to close out your draft with, is to get maybe one or two of these guys to kind of just flesh out your wide receiver core for the most part. These are mostly wide receivers we're talking about, and have some depth there. Have a depth play that situationally may be someone that you could start on any given week. So there you go. So that's it. That's the top 10 tiers for half PPR leagues. And again, you got to take tiers with a grain of salt. I don't like to use tiers when I'm doing my drafts because I look situationally at a number of factors regarding players. When you get my app, My Perfect Fantasy Draft, you'll see that I rate players on 4 key stats. Value is only 1. Tiers are pure value rankings, okay? So value makes up 30% of my VORC score, but it's also their outlook as far as what's their volume, what's the situation, are they playing with a new quarterback, are they on a team where they lost their offensive coordinator, is it a team with a new coach? These things all have positive and negative impacts on their outlook score. Likewise, their consistency and their reliability, super important. Tiers don't look at that at all. It's just looking at straight up, how many points is this player going to get, and what tier does that put them into? So I don't like to use it as a point of contention. Like if there's a tier 6 and a tier 7 player, but the tier 6 player has a poor outlook and poor reliability, well, I'm going to go for the tier 7 guy because I know I can count on that guy better. And that's a better way to use it. Anyway, I do invite you to go to my website, fantasyfootballmaverick.com. You can check out my app for free. All you got to do is just sign up. You can access a limited version of the app. You can look at the standard points list. You can look at the value rankings there. You'll see the notations about the players, links to news about the players, what's their consistency and reliability and outlook. How does that all look? It's a really good resource, and if you like it, you can subscribe for only $19.95. That will unlock all the features of the app, and it will allow you to access all the lists with all the various point schedules. You can even create your own custom point schedule if you want. But it will unlock all the filters, all the player filters, all the draft mode for all the different sizes of leagues that you're in, from 8-team to 16-team. So it's all very helpful. It's a great draft day tool. You run it in parallel with your draft, and it just helps to recommend players at each round of the draft. It literally breaks the draft down round by round based on the size of your league, your draft position, and shows you each little pod of players between your current pick and your next pick. But instead of having it ranked by their draft position, their ADP or whatever, it ranks them by their VORC score. So the value, the outlook, the reliability, and the consistency, they get points based on how they do on each of those 4 categories. Those points are added up. That's the VORC score. And in each round in draft mode, it's sorted by the VORC score. So what you need to do, just focus on the players at the top of the list, ignore the players at the bottom of the list. It makes it super easy to find the right players. And I hope you've watched some of my other mock drafts where I utilize the tool. It's very, very helpful in helping you strategize from round to round what players you should be targeting. Who should you be targeting? Who should you be avoiding? And the best part is that if a player falls from, like, let's say you're from the third round where he's expected to go to the fourth round, you can restore him into the fourth round list, and you can see his VORC score. His VORC score will be modified because the value will change because we're basing it against a fourth round pick as opposed to a third round pick. There's a number of cases where a player that I would not consider in the third round becomes a great choice in the fourth round. It happens all the time. There's also many cases where a guy's a poor choice in the third round. Guess what? He's still a poor choice in the fourth round. Just don't get him. Don't bother with that player. It's very, very helpful that way. So I invite you to go check it out. Again, fantasyfootballmaverick.com is where you'll find the app, and you can try it out for yourself, and you can let me know what you think. Leave a comment down below. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it informative, and if you have any questions, you want to talk about any of these players, leave a comment down below. I do appreciate it, all right? Thank you so much, everybody. Have yourself a great fantasy week.